Welcome to the Mantic Universe podcast. I'm Clem, and for this episode, I'm with Sarah.
Hello.
Today we wanted to chat about two things. First, gaming days and events in general. And second, how to bring more people into the hobby, which in a way means making it a more welcoming and inclusive space.
Absolutely. Let's start with gaming days and events. So yesterday, you hosted another gaming day in Berlin. Clem, will you give us an overview of it?
Well, the usual. So I don't even remember at that point how many other such events we've done. Probably close to a dozen, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so it's always a bit of the same idea, which is I don't limit it to just one game or Mantic games in general, and it's just I have access to a cool space, and I share this with good friends from the gaming club. And so having access to the space is kind of a critical point of it. Mm-hmm. The space I'm using, as you guys probably know, is my workspace, which is a co-working space in a way. And the thing is, it's a huge building, and people come here during the week to work. And on Saturday and Sunday, there isn't that much activity. So a while ago, I talked with the staff and said, hey, listen, I have this hobby on the side, playing games with friends. It's kind of a nerdy thing, but, it's a nerdy space to begin with here. And so I was wondering if I could use the space on the weekend. And they say, yeah, that sounds good. Why not open it to our community, like the members of the co-working space? I said, of course, that's great. That brings in potentially more people. Mm-hmm. How many people joined? I don't know exactly because I didn't do a registration form for this one properly, but we had about 10 tables.
Yeah, it's worth noting in this space, because it's a co-working space, they have a bunch of huge tables that are perfect for this. They're wide enough, and then they're very long, and so you just put a bunch of mats on these tables and divide it, and it's a really great space for it. Yeah,
it's like the kitchen community area, sort of, and so the tables fit 2 6x4 mats, basically, so 12x4 in length, like in dimension, roughly.
Like a big picnic table and a bunch of them.
Right, and there are other tables further in the space that we could set up if we even expand to more people. Mm-hmm. But so for me, it's really more about we have the space, let's share it. And we had a bunch of different games played. It depends from one weekend to another. Yeah. Yesterday we had Kings of War, of course, because that's what we both play. So it was represented. There was a table with a group of people playing Mech Warriors. So it's very funny because they spend 6 hours doing, all sorts of notes and stuff, but they have a great time.
Good.
There was Spearhead, so the AOS one box thingy. Yeah. It's the first time I saw it actually, but so they had, I think, 2 tables at some point, some Warcry, some The Old World. I think they had up to 3 games in parallel at some point. So it's cool. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. I wasn't there for the morning, but my estimate is that there were about 20 people who came, 20 to 30 maybe.
Yeah, something like that, probably.
Yeah. How do you organize the food when you have that many people together? And maybe you should also say the hours. Like how long does this last?
Yeah, so I start not too early in the morning because it's weekend after all. I'm not a morning person. So I open the door shortly before 10 because that leaves me time to pick up things before and start setting up before. And we usually play till 6 or so. Yesterday I left, it was 7:30 time to pack everything back up and so on. So throughout the day. And so obviously lunch is right in the middle of it. And we've done different versions of this. At some point I was just ordering pizzas for everyone, but it grew to a point where it starts to be a problem, like when you have to order 20 pizzas.
Well, and there was the snafu that one time where you ordered 20 pizzas and the restaurant confirmed the order. 1 hour went by, no pizzas. 2 hours went by, no pizzas. And then after a couple hours, and it's like 2 p.m. by then, and everybody's starving and tired and a little hangry, and then the restaurant cancels the order. And so I think after that time, you were like, nope, we're gonna do something else.
Yeah, I mean, the ordering in is kind of the easier thing in general when it works, but when it doesn't, it gets nasty.
Yeah.
It also ends up being quite expensive because then you order in a pizza, might be too much food for some people, or some people just don't want to eat a pizza. And so what I've done for this one, I've asked if someone would volunteer to make some food. And one of the members who already cooked in December for a similar gaming day said, yeah, I'm happy to do it again. And so what happens is I pay for the groceries. We agree on something. So we make one vegan and one meat eater version of the dish, basically. And I buy the groceries and then estimate how many portions we have, like how many people want to eat. And then people make donations to cover costs. And so everything like €5 per person is plenty. It even leaves a bit of a profit. Which covers for people who are a bit more tight on money, or also it buys more mats and terrain and stuff. But yeah, for me also, those gaming days are kind of a social thing as well. Like it's an occasion where you meet up with people and you chat, and you also happen to play games, but it's not the only thing that you do with people. And so maybe that's a cultural thing as a French person. Having food to share is kind of an important element. And we also see it that some people bring in, cakes they've made. We've had different type of cakes brought. Yesterday we had super fancy cupcakes. I don't know if you've tried them.
No, I didn't see them.
You didn't see the cupcakes?
I'm so sad. It's probably for the best that I didn't, because I'm trying to live up my sugar intake. But I can't. As a spouse, I think you ultimately failed by not telling me there were cupcakes.
What? I thought you knew.
This is the first time hearing of the cupcakes. I had no idea there were cupcakes. I did not get a cupcake. I'm upset about this.
Sebastian was a pretty good pastry chef.
Sebastian brought the cupcakes? A pastry chef brought cupcakes, and you didn't say, oh, I should tell my wife to make, or save
They were on the table.
To make sure, which out of the 10 tables we had. Oh, okay.
Next to the curry. So anyway, what I wanted to say
we're going to go have a marital dispute here. No, okay, sorry, continue.
So food, social thing, plot twist.
Surprise.
Yeah, and I'm not supposed to eat them, and I ate one. It was decent.
Oh, keep rubbing it in.
Okay.
What flavor?
Banana, peanuts, whatever.
That sounds wonderful. I will, on the food thing, I mean, you mentioned that a pastry chef made these cupcakes that I didn't get. I do like, since we started having people cook the meals, it brings out different aspects of people's personalities and different aspects of the community. At this type of event, you get to know different facets of people in different ways. And so the people who step up and say, oh, I'll cook the lunch and I have this great family recipe to share, or there's this thing I really know and like how to cook. And then those people start to feel like more of the community. And so I think it's been nice that it kind of includes people in a different way and brings more people in, and you get to know them in a different way. And now that we have people volunteer to cook and bring different things, I think it's really enhanced the kind of social community-based aspects. Then, somebody jumps in to be a sous chef, and somebody jumps up to set out the buffet with the plates and the cutlery. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, to me it really makes it more of a community rather than just it's a hit and run, or like like a one night stand of gaming where you show up and I want to just play the game, shake hands and bye bye.
Absolutely.
Like you actually take them to dinner first and then see them again next time.
I can't with your analogies.
Okay, that was a bad joke.
Move on. But so for finding spaces to host gaming days, finding a space with a kitchen that you can access is a good one.
Yeah, no, that makes a difference because it really makes it a community space on top of a gaming space.
Yeah. So how do you get mats, terrain, etc. for that many people?
So the way it worked is I owned 2 or 3 mats when I started doing this already, and I thought, okay, I want to organize more events, and having mats is one ingredient to it. And so I started looking around for good deals. So I bought a small lot, like 5 or 6 mats in one go from the local gaming store that wanted to renew its stock. So at a discount, I told them, I buy them for the community to play games. Well, so they gave me an even better price. They gave me a couple more mats, I don't remember. But it really was the idea of over time I want to build a collection like this. Was also a good excuse to just buy more toys. For the terrain, it started also with I just dumped all of my terrain collection basically in those boxes, and then I tried to get other people involved to paint some terrain or build some terrain. And also received some donations of terrain already made. Some
amazing donations. On the game I was playing yesterday, there's one of somebody who hand makes, like, stone by stone, it looks like kind of a medieval stone staircase with a platform on top.
There's a tower, a bunch of medieval fantasy stuff, and it's built brick by brick with foam bricks.
Exactly. He sculpts each individual brick, paints it, puts them together. It's just incredible, the things people have donated.
Yeah, and the thing is, from their perspective, it's great because it was just clutter in the basement. Like, they enjoy building the terrain, but at some point it's like, okay, I played 2 games on it, but I don't play so much.
Yeah.
I enjoy building the terrain.
Yes.
And now I can't throw it away. Like, it would be too painful. And so they're actually happy to give it to the group because I have storage space as well.
Yes.
And so it goes from their tiny city flat into the actual storage place where we can play. And it's a win-win situation ultimately. Yeah,
this is like with the cooking, with different aspects of a community. You find different people bring different things that they're happy to contribute. And it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what advice would you give to other people who are potentially interested in organizing their own gaming events?
I would say it depends on many factors. It takes several ingredients to make it work. And one generic advice that I like is, I think it comes from the world of free software, is scratch your itch, meaning don't try to imagine what other people will want or what will think is a good thing or whatever, and start by, well, you are yourself a gamer, or why are you even interested in doing events? It's because you want to see one particular aspect of it. And so scratching your itch really is asking for self-awareness on why are you even motivated to do the whole thing, and focus on that point. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's, in my case, I'm really more interested about seeing many different games, seeing people that I enjoy spending time with, and that's why I do more gaming days that are open to multi-systems rather than focus on one game and make it a tournament or something like this. Then obviously finding a space and finding the people is the key ingredients. Yeah. I know people always think finding the space is difficult, but in my opinion, there are many, many options. I know the one that I found is kind of specific, and it's because it's a universe that I work in and I also understand. But I'm sure of all of the people in your local clubs or groups of friends, there is most certainly one person with a similar type of situation where a workplace can be accessible to groups of friends on the weekend because it's not being used for actual work. And I've heard so many stories of different options, like some people getting space in restaurant or this type of establishments.
Well, gaming shops are also a classic. They often maybe they don't have so many tables, but the one where we went to the Ambush tournament in Frankfurt, there's a ton of tables. Yes. It's an awesome place. Where I grew up in Kansas, there were community centers that were operated by the city. You could rent them for free.
Yeah.
They have kitchens, and they have a bunch of picnic tables you could set up. Here in Berlin, we know people who host gaming events out of different local like organizations or associations, nonprofits.
Like a neighborhood center. They have activity rooms, and one evening you have yoga classes, the next one counseling for young mothers, and the next one tabletop gaming.
Exactly. In France, there was a military base that had a hobby room that the tabletop gamers had taken over.
Yeah.
And we used to go to this base. You'd have to show ID to get in. But there are all kinds of places that you can find. Yeah.
So I think it still is important to find a space that you feel comfortable with. What made a big difference in my case, I think, was having the ability to store some stuff on site, to not have to transport everything all the time. So although it isn't a permanent solution, it's not a space that is only for tabletop. I have a few big plastic boxes stored away on site, and a cabinet for my mats. And so whenever we want to do tabletop, it's not that much of a logistical nightmare.
Also important for home harmony. Before he had a place where he could store things on site, living together, we always just had random boxes full of all kinds of stuff that you would collect for these gaming days.
We still do.
Yeah, but it's much, we also have more space for it now, but a lot of it's on site, and it makes for a more harmonious living situation if you happen to live with other people.
Yeah, or in a small flat, so it definitely helps.
Absolutely.
But and I think it probably goes along with the scratch your itch elements. Next, what I want to do is also include not just gaming, but building stuff and painting stuff, like also the creative part.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, the gaming days, events like this, tournaments to some extent as well, they're really about meeting up with people in the community aspect. And nothing, forbids that we also do, painting or other similar elements in a group. And the last thing I will say on the whole topic is I think the main limitation that I have at the moment is I'm a bit alone on the organizational side. So lots of people, jump in and do stuff and help out with it. But because of how the space is organized, one of the members of the space has to be here to, supervise things a little bit. And so far, no other members, stepped up and said, "Oh, I will also take this responsibility." And so I think right now this is the main limiting factor, because if I can't make it, or I'm tired or I'm sick, then the gaming day doesn't happen. And I think finding also one or two, good friends so you can do this with. Makes it a lot more reliable and a lot stronger in a way.
Yeah.
Because you combine forces, and sometimes you can also sit back a little bit and enjoy it. Not that I don't do it in the current setup, but there is a lot more pressure to kind of make it happen, or I'm very aware that the day that I stopped pushing this, then we won't have these type of gaming days in this location.
Yeah.
So if I could do it differently, I would definitely find a space where I'm not the only person,
who can access it.
Yeah, access it and make it happen.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The getting support from other members of the community has been really important to different aspects of the gaming day, even getting enough mats so that you can now have 10 tables. Remember, you got donations, and people who had, 5 or 10 euros to chip in did, and then you used that money, you bought a bunch of mats, you leave them at the place. They're only used for the gaming days.
There are, I'm not sure, maybe a quarter of the mats who actually belong to people and to members. Yeah. They said, I bought a couple of mats myself to play at home, and I don't use them so often, and I'd rather have them stored here at the club because that's where I actually play most of my games. Or I don't need the 3 mats that I own to play.
Or I don't have space to store them at home, so you store them here for me for free, and in exchange, the gaming club gets to use them whenever they want.
Exactly, yeah. That also works like this.
This makes sense. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about how did the gaming day actually go? What games did we play?
Well, so for this time, I didn't schedule any games in the morning. That's based on experience, when you try to do too many things at once. Because in the morning, there's always so many different things to do, like clear up the space, launch the dishwasher, start coffee.
I mean, as everybody else starts to play, as the organizer, there are 20 people who want 20 different things from you. And you can't just be at a table playing because you're running around.
Yeah. No, that's I've tried it in the past, and it's a bit too stressful. And so my learning, and it went quite well yesterday in that regard. Like I had a bunch of different things to do, but it wasn't too stressful because I didn't feel like, I'm making my opponent wait or something, or let me get back to my game to set up, or sorry, I will pause setup because I need to solve something on another table. So I just ran around and did Orga thing in the morning. For lunch, I just had to sit at the table and eat the delicious beans and curry that was cooked, so that was nice. Mm-hmm. And in the afternoon, I played a couple of ambush games, so that was also good to see Vince that I hasn't seen in a while, and played with my ogres again and his undeads. And we also had set up 3 ambush tables next to each other, so that was fun. To see the other games on the side and chat a bit with the other people. And also some of the players are a bit less experienced, so it's good to have everyone in the same area so that we can answer some rules questions.
Oh yeah, during our game I think we were actually on the same mat with the dividing line down the middle, right. And we kept turning to you and Vince asking questions, and it was really nice that you were there.
Yeah.
How did the game itself go? Who won? Were there any memorable moments?
So Vince won the first one. I won the second one. I'm trying to think. It's interesting because now this ogres list is like a very simple list that I wrote to play demo games, and it's ultimately very convenient because it's very compact. Like there's 4 regiments of large infantry, 2 large infantry heroes, and that's it. That's the whole army. Yeah. So it fits in a tiny box. It's very straightforward to play. Sort of. And so, I quite like it. We had a pretty dense table in terms of terrain, which is good for ambush. But
there was a lot of terrain.
A lot of terrain to those tables, right?
Yeah.
And it made it a bit more challenging. So for the first game, I overextended a little bit. And I'm trying to remember now. He had a regiment of Wraith, so the defense 6, flying undead. They don't have that many attacks, but they're almost impossible to kill.
Defense 6 is just ugly.
Yeah. And so in the first game, I focused a bit too much on those, trying to kill them, which is very funny because I have 2 or 3 troops of them in my undeads list, and every single game they're the MVP because people, really try to kill them.
People focus on them, and your other units come and kick butts.
And when there are troops, they're like dash 12, and so people do 2-3 wounds. Nerve check, result 11.
Yes.
Come again. And then they are life leech, so they heal a little bit. Yeah. And then next round they do 1 more wound. Nerve results 10. Come again.
Yeah.
And so, I basically did the exact same mistake. So that was funny.
This is something I've learned tactically, that opposing units with really high defense, I basically just ignore them and focus all my power on the other units with lower defense to try to get rid of them, and then you do double charges on the high defense people.
Yeah.
I've had more success with this tactic than getting kind of sucked into the trap of, they have defense 5 or 6, let me throw everything at them from the beginning. That's how you lose a game.
Yeah, or you can ignore them or redirect them. And
exactly. Yeah, just annoy them, put some chaff around them, just keep them busy while you take out the other people.
Yeah, and so in the second game, I had the 2 regiments of boomers, short-range shooty ogres against them. And I actually managed to get several rounds of shooting against him. I almost didn't see it. Like I could take a flank with the boomers against them, but then it would have exposed their flank. And so instead I stayed away and kept shooting at him. And but yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's always the enjoyable part about Ambush, because we thought, oh, are we playing 2300 or are we playing 750? And I thought, you know what, we don't want to go set up another table somewhere else. And instead, let's just stick to 750, share them out with other players who could play a bit more relaxed here. And we ended up playing 2 games while you guys played basically 1.
You played more than 2 games. We'll explain why later, but yes.
But yeah, so you played also a game of Ambush, right?
I did. So I played a 750-point game with a new player. I was the one explaining the rules, so now I'm the missionary for the hobby. This was maybe my 15th game ever, and I felt a little bit like a new member of a cult, where like immediately once you're in, you're supposed to go and then convert other people to the cult. And so even though I'm still kind of a new player, now I was the one teaching another new player.
Yeah.
It's very exhausting being the teacher.
Yeah, it always takes something out of you, right? Like you have to focus on so many things. You try to be aware of, okay, how are they doing? Or, oh, if I really wanted here, I could take a flank. Should I tell them about it? Or should I pull my punches or not?
Oh, I absolutely was pulling my punches. And in teaching, my mode is just explain everything. I mean, so I'll back up and say, it was her first game. She is an 11-year-old kid. She had a background. She, with her mom, would play Dungeons and Dragons, and then somehow she decided she wanted to get into tabletop. The mom doesn't do beyond Dungeons and Dragons, doesn't do tabletop. And so she got into 40K. And as an 11-year-old girl, she found the whatever community that they had found to be part of not very welcoming. And then she somehow discovered Kings of War. She got herself some dwarves, put them together, painted them, had purple and turquoise color palette. Absolutely love it.
Awesome, Maria.
Yeah, it looks stunning. It's a shiny purple. They just looked really good. And she read the rules and kind of taught herself, and then was begging her mom to find her someone to play with. The mom messaged the local gaming community, and I volunteered to do a demo game with her.
Yeah, so you basically gave a Kings of War demo to kids who recently joined with their mom after writing their own list and painting their own dwarf army. And I mean, it's kind of sad to think that this would be seen as an exceptional event in a way, right? And yet it is. Like when we first got the message, it's like, oh, wow, that's funny. Like it's not every day that we have a young girl that wants to play Kings of War and join us.
Yeah.
And well, it kind of, I think, made us all think, I mean, you and I think, okay, how do we, best do this, but also in general, how do we make our Kings of War group a more diverse space? And I mean...
Can we pause before we do this? Can I tell you how the game actually went?
Sure.
And then we get into this. So she had her dwarves. I had my Northern Alliance army. It looked awesome. The mat that we were playing on, that we were sharing with you, was an icy mat. The terrain was really cool. In addition to the kind of medieval staircase that we talked about earlier, there were also really cool frozen lakes, pine forests with snow on them. One of the donated sets of terrain are those kind of frozen-looking hills with the shiny, kind of icy-looking stuff. I have a Northern Alliance army with a kind of ice-based theme, and my color palette is kind of turquoises, blues to look like ice, and then pops of a kind of purpley burgundy red pink. And so we're not going to say her name because she's a minor, but the kid who I was playing against had a purple and turquoise army. And so it just looked really awesome on this icy mat.
Really nice.
And she was so fun to play with. She kept saying, as our troops were battling, she'd say, okay, now imagine the scene. There's these, Frostclaw riders coming up over the hill, and my troops see them coming and they charge them, and she just is like narrating it like it's a movie, and was really into it in the most deliciously geeky, awesome way.
She's a professional D&D player then, right? Like writing the stuff. That's really cool.
That's right. That's what she brought to it. She had an innate grasp of tactics and kind of knew the right questions to ask and positioning. She had a cannon. I don't remember what the official name for it is. It tore my units up. That thing was gnarly. And at first I thought, okay, she's an 11-year-old kid. I don't want to just ground her to the dust. So I was pulling my punches. And then at some point she realized, and she was like, when I play with my grandma, she always lets me win and I hate it. Stop doing that. And around the same time, I realized that she's actually a very good player. And I was like, oh crap, I better actually like put some more effort into this. And so we had fun. My Northern Alliance army won in the end, but we were playing what's the name of the scenario when you're trying to get as much
Dominate?
Unit strength, or within 8
around
inches
the center,
of the center. Yes, we were playing Dominate, and my Frostclaw Riders, she managed to kill my Snow Foxes early, which, I mean, they're chaff, that's their job. And my Frostclaw Riders also she killed early. It's always a loss when they're out, but they waver and die pretty easily. They don't have amazing nerve.
Yeah.
But I have two, my knowledge of the lingo is still not regiments, but troops of the ice elementals.
Right.
And they always just do beautifully. And then I have one regiment of pack hunters.
Yeah, the shooty ones, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so the pack hunters kind of stand back and shoot. I have the Ice Queen who surges my ice elementals into battle, so they shoot and then they surge in. And it was fun, but she did really well. And
it's the first game ever,
her first game ever, and mostly we had fun. And at the end, she was kind of tugging on her mom's sleeve, like, when do we play again? When do we play again? She's also really into the making aspects of it. She's a 3D printer and a laser cutter. She's into
it was very, very cool to see them, come in the space, which is a massive Fab Lab / maker space / co-working space.
Yeah.
And so they, they have their own in near where they live. And this one's like, oh, that's a pretty cool space. So there's something that you share
absolutely
with them. So that's also really, really nice.
So we were talking about how you get files to 3D print, and I told her about the vault, and then she ran up to you and was like, tell me about the vault. How do I access the vault? She's an 11-year-old who knows what she wants, and she means business.
She's on point. She knows exactly how to do this.
Yeah.
I'm Brandon Rossbond of Winged Hussar Publishing, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe Podcast.
But so as I was saying, when we saw the message, as a group, when we saw the message, hey, I want to bring my daughter to play Kings of War, who wants to play games, the first reaction was like, that's awesome, and also, oh shit, let's do it properly. So that's kind of one reason why you, Sarah, volunteered to do it, because, okay, that's let's say the least threatening, or how to make it the most welcoming possible. And so we have the chance that you're part of the group already. And so that helps kind of in these situations. But also afterward, or like the second part was kind of thinking, how come it's something exceptional that a mother brings their kid to play games?
Not only their kid, but their daughter.
Right. No, but what I mean is, it shouldn't be a unique event or like something, oh my God, like we didn't expect this to happen ever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a problem, right? Like,
yes.
And so making it a more diverse space and more welcoming space, it's kind of coming from this realization. I mean, we've already known, like it's very easy whenever we do gaming days, you just look around in the room and you look at the population. It's not that diverse, and that's an euphemism. And so I think everyone is quite aware of this. But this particular case kind of put it on the radar once more. And I think for me, it's not just because it's the right thing to do, but also the main fundamental thing that Kings of War needs new players.
Yeah.
And so one good way to get more people in is to have the door open to more different people.
Yes.
And so, yeah, if you only limit to middle-aged men who played tabletop when they were teenagers, well, there's less and less of us, and also there's a limited amount of us in the first place. And there is no good reason why only this population would be interested in tabletop. And the fact is, if you go past the initial stigma or the initial social marker, well, a lot of other people are also interested in, and yet we don't see them as often in our gaming clubs, and that's kind of a problem, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No, well, so there's the gender aspect that bring in more women, you get more players. There's also the kind of racial aspect. Most of the room when we play, it's predominantly white.
Yeah.
And so one of the sets of conversations that I know that you've been having with other people in the Berlin community is how do we open the doors wider for all kinds of other people to come in?
Yeah.
And just at the end of the day, everybody benefits. You have more people to play with, you have fun together.
Yeah, no, it is definitely an advantage for the people who are already in the room. Like nobody is pushed out because of this. It's just more, we have more people to play game with.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, the first kind of distinction is, as you mentioned, gender. Like in the whole room, there aren't that many women playing.
Yeah.
Like technically, I think yesterday there were 3 women. It was you, the mom, and the kid you were playing with.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. There was a funny moment where somebody clearly noticed that, the 2 women and girl are at the same table and came to try to encourage us. And he was clearly like looking for something positive to say. And he said, wow, this is a beautiful gaming table. I think you have the most beautiful table in the room. The models are painted well. I know he was trying to be encouraging, but it's this kind of stereotypical thing. Like you go to the women and girl and talk about beauty. And so we looked at him and said, yeah, they are beautiful models, and they also kill really well. he kind of froze, and then he smiled, and I think he got what I was trying to do. But it was just this funny moment of, it reminds me of a Louis C.K. joke where he talks about being a white patient in a hospital and like seeing a black doctor and immediately thinking, yeah, that's good, more of that. But you kind of catch yourself in this moment of, you're trying to encourage something, but you're still, at the end of the day, reinforcing the stereotype.
Yeah, I remember that sketch.
Yeah, I'm not explaining it very well, but I kind of... we had a moment of it yesterday where we kind of chuckled over it.
And from my perspective, from as a man, it is sometimes difficult because even if you feel like, oh, I want to support this, or I want to, make a positive comment, it can be intimidating, or like you describe it, you can make a. You
say the wrong thing when you're trying to be supportive. Even if
you have good intention and so on.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's still important to do it and important to show support. That kind of contributes to creating a good environment. And so, yeah, I hope that the guy in question didn't feel too bad.
I'm not going to say who it is, but we're cool. He's a lovely dude. And by the end, we were both smiling and kind of giggling over the encounter. So cool. I'm not in his head, but I think we both went away laughing.
All right. And so, yeah, can you maybe tell us more about your experiences as a woman in tabletop? Because that's the whole thing.
It is the thing. Absolutely. So I got into the hobby in part through you as my partner playing. I remember when I was a teenager, which is when a lot of people first get into tabletop, going into the gaming shop in my hometown in Kansas. I really liked board games. I'd seen people playing D&D. I wanted to know a bit more about it. I loved fantasy. And so I go into this shop and I just immediately felt like on a visceral level, I don't belong here as a girl. Everybody there were dudes. They kind of look at you funny, whether it's actually the reality or only my perception. In my head, I was like, they're all just looking at me and going, girl, it's a girl. And I felt very much on the margins of it. And so,
how old were you at that point?
14, 15.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, okay, this is like, I don't feel welcome here. I was a kind of a geek girl. I mean, I had different aspects of my personality, but among other things, I was a geek. And I did have friend groups where we were into geeky things together. Some of those friend groups, a lot of the people were boys. But so like the people who would play D&D together that I knew, it was always all boy friend groups. And even if they were also in my friend group, I wasn't invited to play D&D. And it felt like if I had invited myself in, I would always just be treated as the girl. Yeah. And that wasn't something I was interested in. And then you get in weird situations where, like, as the only girl, you know, one of them's inevitably trying to date you if you're, you know, a heterosexual teenager. And I didn't want to have to deal with that. And so I kind of tested the waters, thought about it, went to the gaming shop, really didn't feel welcome, went and nourished my love of fantasy gaming and making things, art, and other ways. So then fast forward, you and I, we weren't married yet, but we were together. We were living together. I know you've talked in other episodes of the podcast, you were very sick. You hadn't been playing tabletop. You played as a teenager, but then you'd stopped playing. You weren't playing when we met. And then you're very sick, you're recovering, you're looking for something to do to engage your brain while your body is resting, and you got back into tabletop. Yep. I remember this moment when you called your brother and were like, hey, do you remember those models that I gave your sons? Do they still use those? And if not, could I have them back?
Yeah, it was a stressful thing. Like, I hope they are, you know, already thinking about something else and we can go.
It was like you strategizing how to take things back from your teenage nephews.
I have to admit, it's true. Entirely true.
But it worked. And they also hadn't, like, thrown them away. And so I remember seeing these really beautiful models that you had painted as a teenager. They were fire themed, and you did a really gradual gradation from yellows through oranges and reds. Mm-hmm. And so this is how I was introduced more fully to tabletop. This was 8 years ago, 8.5. Yep. We started playing some games together, basically because you were like, okay, I'm stuck at home recovering. I want to play. I need somebody to play with. Sarah, my partner, you can play with me. Let me teach you the game. Yep. So we played some Necromunda. We played some 40K. We played some Bolt Action. And I forgot until you reminded me on another episode of the podcast that we actually played Kings of War. We didn't have models yet, so we cut out the correct size of the bases from cardboard and paper and just used them to represent the base footprint.
Yep, and in half size, by the way. Like,
right.
Already then, because I didn't have a mat, like a 6x4 at the time, and so I thought, well, from what I read of the rules, it would work perfectly well if I divide all of the dimensions by 2. And so we played a half-size Kings of War 2nd edition, something like 8 years ago.
Yeah. So I kind of flirted with it then, played different gaming systems. I remember, though, also ultimately, and I enjoyed playing with you. We would go to the local gaming club where we lived in France, but I didn't have the greatest experience, and I didn't fully get into it then. First, I had a hard time finding models that I really resonated with. Different people want different things when they're picking an army. One of the things that I want is to be able to have the fantasy that I'm, like, fighting with that army, which means that I want to see something of how I fantasize about myself looking in battle in that army. And when 8 years ago I was looking, that meant for women models, and women models who looked like they were ready for battle. And what I was finding instead in a lot of different gaming systems were either no women models or women models that were there first and foremost to look sexy. So, like, they're going into battle, their boobs are out, and their femoral artery, in a bikini, like the femoral artery, your big artery, and your thighs exposed. And I'm just like, dude, what's the first thing that gets called your boobs? You're going to battle. Why would your boobs be like, this just is illogical. And, like, I'm not a Puritan. Like, if you want sexy units, have sexy units. That's cool. But I remember being really frustrated, feeling like the male or the units that look kind of gender neutral, there's a wide variety. Some of them have, they have all different types of bodies that you could choose from. And I felt like the few female models I was finding really just looked hypersexualized. If I had to guess, most of them were probably designed by, like, straight dudes who, want
to sell them to straight dudes.
Exactly. Which, again, like, fine. I'm not saying don't do that. Just as a woman, give me some more options to choose from. And so I found the Sisters of Battle units through 40K. You had some of them. This was before they had been re-released. So at that point, we couldn't buy more of them?
Yeah, I think, so I don't remember the details. So we weren't playing the game so much. And I think we played Shadow Wars Armageddon also, which is kind of like Necromunda. I don't know if you remember exactly which game is which, but I can tell you. And in that one, you can literally play the Sisters of Battle, and so that's why we got some. But yeah, the models were harder to find, and they were all metal and so on.
Yeah.
And so that was a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
And also, like, they're a very specific sci-fi army. So if you want to play another system, then these models don't work anymore. So.
Yeah, but I love them. I think it was around that time that I read the Red Sister trilogy from Mark Lawrence. It's a sci-fi trilogy about battle nuns in space. And so I was really into battle nuns at the time. And I found the Sisters of Battle. And I felt like, okay, finally, we get women units that are actually here to battle. They just look cool.
They're legit fighters.
Yeah, they're legit fighters, and I like something about it just really resonated with me, but I couldn't get more of them. And so then I just felt really frustrated. And so that was one thing that led me to not get super into the hobby at the time. And then the other thing, the local club that we were playing at where we lived in France at the time, was my perception of it was that it was very hierarchical. There were other women involved, but they were I remember seeing at least one other woman, but she and I were very much on the fringes of the group. Like we would go, and some of this was a language barrier because I speak French like a 5-year-old. Like I can get my basic needs across, but if you want to talk philosophy, it's going to go over my head. Although to be fair, in tabletop during most games, you're not talking philosophy, you're using like 5-year-old vocabulary. Yeah. But some of it was a language barrier. I don't want to make all of it out to be gender. And I felt very much like just kind of ostracized from that group. I felt like I was treated kind of like an appendage of you. And I just didn't feel taken seriously as a player at all or welcomed in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit on the margin anyway because they were very much the old school historical players at heart.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this is a strict correlation, but they had the very, very strict rule of absolutely forbidding anything unpainted.
Yeah.
And being like psychotic about it. And we've talked about it in several episodes and so on. Like we're not big fans either of unpainted models. But we're okay with models that are not painted yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something entirely different versus these guys and some other clubs that I know they are absolutely 100% opposed to it. And it's kind of like a very narrow-minded, the only way to do the hobby is this way. This is how I do it and how I've done it forever. And if you have even a slightly different opinion, then you don't belong here. And so I think that's also for context. The club was a bit more of that type than...
and also, my perception of it was that it was a club that was very aware of kind of power and hierarchies, and it felt like the purpose of the game is to show off, to crush your opponent, and it didn't feel like this very welcoming, come on in, be a new player, let's have fun together. It felt like kind of a power politic, like a realpolitik Machiavellian world to me as an outsider.
Okay, yeah, I'm not 100%, I don't agree 100% because I think, they had demo lists and demo armies and so they weren't like keeping us out necessarily, but they had from my perspective, we can disagree or have a different experience with it. Maybe that's actually the point, right? Like my experience as a French who already knew tabletop, I can interact maybe easier with in their framework. And for you coming from the outside,
as an international woman,
more discovering the whole thing, you weren't that welcome after all,
right?
And like. One thing that I'm absolutely certain about is if you read about tabletop online, found that club, went there on your own without being with me, it would have been a completely different experience, or you wouldn't have even crossed the door at all.
What do you mean by completely different experience?
Well, I think they would have been even more lost as to what to do with you.
Exactly.
Because when we were both together, for them it's easier. It's like, okay, well,
she's the
cool.
girlfriend. She's
the girlfriend. It's cool. Like, she's tagging along. I will explain to the man, okay, here is your army list. And hey, woman, you can also have a look, or you can listen.
They wouldn't say that. They just assumed that as the appendage, I would or wouldn't follow along, but that wasn't the point. You were the one who they were directing things to.
Right. And so, yeah, I think if I hadn't been in the picture, it would have been
even worse.
Very different, even worse.
Yeah.
In a way.
The Berlin, so you asked how I get into tabletop. That was another moment where I kind of learned more and ultimately decided I don't want to spend a lot of time and money doing this. I'll play with you some games at home. I'll learn more about it, but I didn't find models that really spoke to me, and I didn't have a community to play with where I really felt like I wanted to be part of it, or like they wanted me to be part of it. And so I didn't take the dive. Then fast forward, we moved to Berlin, and you and some other people in Berlin really invested time and energy in building up a very inclusive local gaming community, and this coincided with you focusing in on Kings of War and deciding that you wanted that to be your primary gaming system. And to me, that those two things of you helping build up a much more inclusive Berlin gaming community and the shift to Kings of War went hand in hand. I think part of the ethos of Kings of War, at least as I've been exposed to it, and part of what I like about it, is that the streamlined rules mean you're not fighting so much about rules. The rules are less fiddly. Yes, there's a lot to remember, but it's much less compared to some other gaming systems. You're really there to have fun.
I think it's a lot more of a fair environment. Like, you can't argue about it. Like, if you have a system with a bit more obscure rules or like subject to interpretation, then there's a hierarchy of, oh, I know what I'm talking about. You're just a you're just a newbie here, or you're just a woman. So let me tell you how it works. With Kings of War, it's a lot harder to do this because the rules are what they are. And so if you happen to be a good strategic player, even if you're an 11-year-old kid, then you will kick butts.
That's right. Or like Chris said in another episode, there's much less of a like, oh, here's some obscure rule that nobody knew about until now. And if I roll a 2 or above, you die. Like, there's less of that.
Yeah.
And so I think already there's kind of less of the like proverbial punch in the face. And I think
gatekeeping of you don't know the details of the thing, so you're not welcome to play with it.
And so to me, then this also creates an ethos of, yes, competing is fun, but it creates an ethos of we're here to have fun together. Let's build community. And alongside that, you and some other people in Berlin, you made a Discord server for tabletop, not just Kings of War, all different types of tabletop. You did a lot of work to make it a very inclusive space, like in terms of how you moderate it. You organize different kinds of events. And so then that kind of made me think, okay, this is actually a really cool community. It's one I want to be part of. We started meeting people as friends who I wanted to hang out with. And then what really led me to pull the trigger was finding some awesome women units that I wanted to build my own army with. So first, there were the Frostgrave Barbarians.
Right.
Really cool women units. And I also really like that they explicitly try to be more diverse in terms of ethnicity and race. They have, in terms of how they paint them, but also in terms of like facial features. It's like a non-stereotyping, just really cool, inclusive army. And the people are like, they're battle ready. They will go into a battle and they'll kick butts. And so I used the Frostgrave Barbarians and I kit bashed those with the Mantic Icekin Hunters and the Pack Hunters. And I made my all-women Northern Alliance army. And so basically the game kind of in those 8 years in between when I first got introduced and then when I took the plunge to actually make my own army, the game evolved, and now there were more choices that I could have women units. And so that's how, I still have some gripes about some of the female units. I love you, Mantic, but like some of the Mantic female units don't thrill me, but they're moving in the right direction. I know like the new Champions game has more options, and so that's a really long-winded answer to your question of how I got into tabletop as a woman.
No, I think that's interesting, and that's an important thing to hear also, like also understand a bit what the hurdles were and if there's anything that we as a community can do to reduce them for the next ones coming, right? Both 11-year-old kids like the one you played with yesterday, but also, mothers or partners or just any woman that is kind of geeky and interested in these topics in a way or another, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you were saying earlier, kind of what are the reasons that we want to make the hobby more inclusive? Like, yes, it's the right thing to do, but also beyond just the kind of ethical parts of it, the goal for Kings of War in particular and other games that are less commonly played than Games Workshop games is you constantly need more people in the hobby. And so making it more inclusive means more people to play with. But I also think about this in terms of the finances of the game. Like, 11-year-old girls don't usually have a huge disposable income, but like in my, 30-something-year-old women with disposable incomes, we have money to spend. And so I kind of have been waiting for Mantic to make more really awesome armies that include female units and just be like, okay, shut up and take my money. Like, give me more options. I will spend money on this. And I know there are a lot of other women who will do the same. There's a huge explosion right now in fantasy novels with women readers. There's this book, Fourth Wing, and that whole Imperium series that sold tons of copies worldwide. Before that, there was like the Twilight stuff. Like, there are fantasy worlds with dragons, vampires, all kinds of things that easily would fit into the game that you could just incorporate some of those models and maybe attract a different audience or a wider audience.
That's a point I've made a few times in past episodes. Like, there are so many variants of Tolkien's fantasy, right? And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. You mean Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings
Hobbit,
stuff. No, but all the derivatives as well.
Yeah.
And like there's a bunch of indie games, or also like bigger companies like Mantic and bigger do tons of different games.
Yeah.
And yet all of the fantasy universes that I see from your other hobby or reading are absolutely not represented. And to me, that's very weird. Like, that's a huge untapped market of, as you said, like 30, 40-year-old women.
Like, we have the money to spend.
And you do spend it on books and stuff.
Yeah.
And so the argument of, women are not interested in competition or they're not interested in fantasy, it's just like, that's not true. Like, no, but that some people actually make this point or believe it, which is kind of like, okay, like, open your eyes a little bit.
Absolutely.
Like, look around and you'll see that there are
there are a lot of women
potential customers and people who would play very interesting games with you and like make beautiful armies so from me as a gamer, that's a very exciting thing to think about, to have a bunch more people join us and play games, because ultimately that's really what it is about.
I often think about this, like, there are the Halfling armies that you can do in Kings of War, and they're not paying the licensing fee to, the Lord of the Rings franchise, but everybody knows that that's, like, inspired by LOTR, so, like,
they make their own twist on them.
They do, but, like, so, like, it's a shorthand where, like, what it symbolizes, like, where's the army of witches? Like, where, immediately you can recognize, or where's the, like, kind of Hermione Granger inspired characters. Like, there are so many kind of easily identifiable cultural touchstones that would bring in more women or different types of diverse audiences. But in order to do that, this means that the people making the games and making the units have to have that knowledge. And so then I think this is ultimately also a question about diversity in who's making the games, who's designing the models, who's thinking about the new armies. I think there was an intern at Mantic who was doing an interview with players in one of the Facebook groups that we're in around how to make more diverse models. So I know that Mantic and other companies are thinking about this. But at the end of the day, if you want to know, like, Twilight, I'm not a huge Twilight fan, but these are books that have sold, and movies, and a whole, like, there are action figures that have sold, billions of dollars worth of money. And to know how to kind of turn that into a Twilight-based version of like the halflings, you need to have people who have this kind of cultural knowledge. And how do you base it on that? And if you do that, there's so much money and so many more players who could come into the hobby, I think, in really cool ways.
Yeah, no, that's. I think that's an important thing to consider, and it's probably a long-term move. Like it's steering in that direction, and it's not something that will happen just overnight.
Yeah,
but it's like all of this, good chance events. It's being ready for when the chance comes up that you actually take it and move the cursor in the right direction. In a way, like if we go back to this thing of the 11-year-old girl coming to play, I think, without bragging too much, that she knocked on the right door, right? Like the whole club and the way we function and so on is actually a good environment for an 11-year-old girl to come and join and start playing.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to have a bit of both, right? Like create a good environment, and then whenever there's one comes out of nowhere that actually works well.
And they have a good place to land.
They have a good place to land as kind of a pioneer, sadly, in this thing.
Yeah.
And then that means maybe she'll bring in a friend later, or maybe someone who isn't like out of nowhere more infected with the tabletop virus would see, like for example, in the Motion Lab members, like people who work there, some of them have kids, and sometimes they show up on the weekend to pick up something.
Absolutely.
And if they see just a bunch of middle-aged white dudes, then automatically they think that's a middle-aged.
This isn't for me. Yeah.
This isn't for me, or this isn't something for my kid or something.
Yeah.
If they start seeing more diverse people
in
there, maybe they start thinking, oh, that looks cool. Like, oh, my daughter is reading books with dragons and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know she loves painting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, these two kind of make sense together.
Absolutely.
Well, what's the next one that you do? And maybe I'll bring my daughter, or bring my kid, or I'll come myself.
Yeah, I mean, the girl's mom was at the table all the time. She's also learning the rules. She's into D&D. Like, I think what's going to happen is that as we keep playing with her, then the mom will get on board. But I mean, what you've said is true, that having the pre-existing club where you've already done work over the last couple of years to try to make it a more welcoming, inclusive, community-oriented environment meant that she knocked on the right door. It also meant that, you doing that work over the course of years in Berlin with other people here to make it a welcoming environment also led me to get into the hobby. So what have you done that's worked or not worked to build this really lovely, welcoming community? How did you do it? Where's the room for improvement? And what advice would you give to other people who want to try to whether you view it as a diversity issue or just as an issue of how do I do great community building? Like, what's worked for you in terms of how you've done this?
Yeah, so in our particular case, it started as a bunch of different WhatsApp groups for tabletop, like for different systems. So for 40K, for, I guess, Necromunda, and whatever. There were 4 or 5 that I was a member of. And very quickly, we realized that many people were actually in all of those channels. And then it started to get messy because we were spread on different channels, but actually it was an actual group of people. And so it transformed into a Discord server where we had different channels for different systems, but also a bit more of a community group. Maybe not very tightly knit group, but at least people who kind of know from a distance each other, or I remember that person, and so on. And I think in the context, a lot of the people in those groups, for some reason, probably because of how Berlin is, structured and so on, a bunch of us were migrants, like foreigners living in Berlin. And so using English as the main language for these exchanges, because you had people from everywhere in the world, some of them in Germany for decades, and some of them arrived last week. And so it's easier to just use language, like in the English language, to communicate. And so I think potentially this context of migrants made it by construction a bit more tolerant and open group because one way or another we have a bit of this experience of, we are kind of the foreign elements in our environment.
I didn't think about it until you just said it, but now that you say it, I think that's absolutely right. You know what it's like to feel like the outsider in a place, and whether people are looking at you and thinking of you that way or not, you know what it's like to feel like, oh, I stand out here. And it makes a lot of sense that then this provides a kind of basis for empathy for people from other kind of marginalized or outsider groups and how you include them. That makes sense.
So that's one point. I think also it's just how the sensitivities of the various people who were involved at the start. Like I can think of a few good friends who were very active to run the server at the beginning and our sensitivities. And I mean, then it's a very simple thing if you just kick the Nazis in the face as soon as they show up. Like, you just don't tolerate any type of dog whistling or like people who make, like harassment style comments or like shitty comments in general. You just call them out. So it's like, this is not what we do here. No, you're in the wrong place for this. Yeah. Or like we won't, this won't fly. And then, I don't know, I think some people just leave, right? And some other people probably think, oh, well, okay, like I'll keep those jokes for a different context or...
Some people think, oh, cool, this is a really inclusive space that stands up for, like, if you're a Nazi, you're not welcome here. Like, that makes me want to be more a part of this space because that aligns with my values. So then you, by default, then end up creating a space where the people who are opting in are the people who are, on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's by making it very clear and very obvious, in a way, from the people in power that if you make a transphobic joke here, no one will laugh at your joke and we will call you out on it.
Yeah.
Then instantly it sends a message to all of the people who might be trans or for whom it might be a more sensitive topic. And so I think that sets the tone for the whole community. And in a way, I think this orients, how you approach all the things. And then, of course, it's not just because, I'm, queer friendly or gay friendly or trans friendly, that suddenly all of the, or race friendly, that all of these populations will show up. But it still creates a good environment.
It does. And if people see that you're consistently doing that over the course of years, some of the first games I played, I would see, I don't know what their gender identity was, but like, people of various genders with nail polish on, and there are ways that you walk into the room and you mostly see middle-aged white men, but there's diversity on display in a variety of ways. Yeah. And that, like, who shows up then it reflects back the community that you've created online. Which, the online gaming community for a long time has had problems with racism and sexism. Like, there's Gamergate, there's all kinds of really toxic online spaces connected to gaming and other things. And so the fact that on the Discord you and the other moderators were like, this is not that, I think has had a huge impact.
Yeah, ultimately it's, again, I think a case of what I mentioned earlier of scratch your itch. To me, the tabletop hobby in tabletop gaming is not just about rolling dice and playing games or competing in tournaments. There's a social aspect to it, like it's a way to connect with people, so there's a big part of it that is about sorry for the background noise there. Ripley, our dog, needed to go out. I think keeping in mind this, why do you even have a hobby, or like what do you enjoy here, and realizing that it's connecting with people and talking about something that everyone loves. That's the important part. And then it's about finding the type of people you want to spend time with, and building the type of community that you actually enjoy and want to get more connected with. That's ultimately Chris said that also quite a few times, or at least friends who you happen to also play games with.
Yes.
And that's what actually works in the long term. It's not, in a way, it's not enough to just play games, because ultimately there is really a social aspect of it. Like if it's someone that you don't enjoy spending time with, then no matter what happens for the game, it will just not last so much.
No, this makes sense. I hear from you not only the importance of, in the kind of moderation of the group, saying, like, when people say oppressive things, you call them out and make clear that that's not welcome, but it's not only telling people what not to do, it's modeling and showing what to do, which is treat each other excellently, be generous with each other, be friends, have fun, but it's really modeling a really positive form of community building.
Yes.
And I feel that. I mean, now we have wonderful friends who we've met through this community. Yeah. And that's a really special thing. And that's part of why I do this game. I play all kinds of games. I play video games. Like, if it really is only about competition and gaming, I can do that other places. The art parts, I do other kinds of artistic hobbies. I paint. If it's only about the art and the crafting, I can do that other ways. But in this, it brings those two things together, which I like, but it adds community. And to me, that's the beautiful thing about Kings of War in particular, but tabletop more broadly, is the just really awesome community that you can have through it. And I think this connects both of our topics today, the Berlin Gaming Day yesterday, which happened to include a table with me and an 11-year-old girl. It was her first game. There were people yesterday at the Gaming Day who were from a variety of races and ethnicities. And those things shouldn't be exceptional. This should, for me, this should be the norm of tabletop and of Kings of War. And it felt good to have a day where that was on display. And it just, I was tired leaving the Gaming Day. I'm always exhausted at the end, but I walked away just having had a really fun time.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, maybe as a closing word, what I want to say is, for the first encounter, because we know that it can be a kind of a stressful thing to reach out and come into a big group of new people, and then you realize they're all quite different and it might be stressful. That's why we kind of thought that's a good idea if you volunteer, and that's why you volunteered for doing the demo. But for the next gaming days, I think it's actually important that that kid doesn't just play with the woman, because we don't want to have the woman play.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
And so for the next gaming events, now that I hope it's clear to her and her mom that we're cool, that it's a safe place and it's an enjoyable environment and so on. Well, that means now she's just one of us.
No, that's the goal, right? Is I walk into a room or she walks into a room and somebody doesn't immediately think, oh, there's a woman, oh, there's a girl. It's the, oh, cool, it's another member of our community.
Let me see your army. Oh, your list is nasty. I don't want to play it.
And the first comment that comes to mind in my panicked brain isn't like, oh, beautiful army. It's, oh, I like how you painted the Frostclaw rider or whatever. Yeah. But it's just treat them like a normal human being, just like anybody else. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the angle. So I think there needs to be a bit of a step to assist, regaining some equality somehow. It needs a bit of assistance. If we are not actively supporting it and pushing it, it will not happen.
Correct.
But then we need to go one step further, and the step further is, then they're just one of us, and we just do business as usual, which is we play game, we eat good food, and we have a good time. And some of them happen to be 11-year-old kids, and some of them middle-aged men, but that's okay. And then
absolutely, and I'll reiterate that part of this also then means having models and units that attract that wider audience. For the love of God, fine, keep doing your topless boobs, but put some armor on some of those boobs at least. That's my parting request.
Yes. That's. I think we can.
I think it's reasonable, and that's a good place to start. I need to stop.
We can leave it at that. All right, then. So many universe, so little time.